destroyer, Arashi, stays behind to continue hunting the U.S. submarine Nautilus. With Arashi in the area, Nautilus will not come near the surface for fear that the destroyer will detect it and drop depth charges. If the submarine cannot come near the surface, it cannot use its periscope to sight targets and take aim, so it cannot fire torpedoes effectively. In changing course, the Japanese carriers soon steam right into the path of two American torpedo bomber squadrons. The torpedo bombers of USS Hornet spot the enemy carriers first. All 15 TBD Devastators roll in for the attack. Most of the lumbering airplanes do not even get close. Swarming Zero fighters and flak from enemy destroyers and battleships send them crashing into the briny water below. A single pilot, Ensign George Gay, actually gets his Devastator close enough to drop his 2,000-pound torpedo. But it doesn't explode.
As he approached, he got a bullet in the arm. Then he released his torpedo, and then he was so close that he had to come up to go across the Japanese carrier. Just as he got over the Japanese carrier, his engine quit. So he splashed down on the other side. And he tried to get his gunner out, but he thought the gunner was dead because he had talked to him at one point and then he never heard from him again.
Over the next few hours, George Gay will stay afloat using his life raft as camouflage, the sole survivor. 15 torpedo bombers and 29 men from the Hornet are all lost in a single attack. Ensign Gay is in the water less than 20 minutes when the torpedo bombers of USS Enterprise reach the battle area. As they drop close to the water to begin their attack, they too slam into ferocious anti-aircraft fire and attacks from Zero fighters. Most go down. But 4 Enterprise torpedo bombers manage to escape the deadly barrage and will eventually make it back to the ship. Unfortunately, Tom Eversole, friend of SBD pilot Dusty Cleese, is not among the surviving air crewmen.
I always cry thinking about it. He was my, very, very best friend, and he didn't come back.
But at this point in the battle, Dusty Cleese has more things to worry about. Dusty is part of a dive bomber group well behind the torpedo planes. Heading up Dusty's air group is Lieutenant Commander Wade McCluskey, a 40-year-old Buffalo, New York native. He normally flies a fighter, not a bomber, and he's leading this group like a bat out of hell.
He was a fighter pilot. His whole idea was, it's the one that hits first is the one that's going to win. So we were going at 190 knots.
Dauntless dive bombers usually fly at 160 knots. At 190 knots, they may run out of fuel before they can return. Also among McCluskey's air group is Bruno Guido. Back in February, Guido's quick action and heroism diverted disaster when a suicide bomber targeted Enterprise at the end of the Marshall Islands raid. Guido scrambled from his catwalk battle station to the machine gun in the rear seat of a dauntless dive bomber parked on the flight deck. He opened fire on the Japanese suicide bomber, forcing it to crash. Also flying in the squadron is 19-year-old radio man gunner Don Hoff. He is still getting adjusted to life aboard the massive floating city called Enterprise. The enlisted men's quarters are deep in the bowels of the Big E. It's nearly 2,000 bunks, 4 deep, where Hoff got a rude awakening on his very first night.
My bunk was the bottom bunk, the one that's right on the floor. I was in there just in my shorts, and I woke up about midnight or so, and there was hot water that was splattering on me, splattering in my face, and I just hot on my chest, my stomach. Then I realized that I wasn't in a dream. I looked up there, and this guy is standing there urinating on me. He wasn't sleepwalking. He was one of the local squadron drunks. They pushed this guy, and he staggered on down there, still urinating. So that was my introduction, and I thought to myself, I wonder how long I'm going to be able to put up with this.
Now Hoff is in McCluskey's squadron, and they're in for a surprise. When McCluskey's bombers reach the point where the Japanese carriers are supposed to be, they see nothing but empty ocean.
We got out there, and the sun was shining, and there was a few scattered clouds around, but you could see for a long ways, and there was nothing, absolutely nothing in the water.
The dive bombers are unaware that the Japanese fleet has changed course toward the northeast, heading not for Midway, but for their real prey, Enterprise and her sister carriers. McCluskey faces a dilemma. If he keeps going, his squad will run out of fuel.
We were getting right about the end of where if we have to continue to fly with a bomb load like this, we're going to have difficulty getting back. It was going to be close.
If he doesn't turn back soon, his men will probably have to ditch in the ocean with no guarantee of rescue. On the other hand, the enemy can't be too far away, and the damage his air group could do to those carriers might save a lot of American lives in the long run. McCluskey makes a gutsy choice. He keeps going, risking a crash landing for his entire crew, for a chance to find the enemy and destroy him. And the decision soon pays off. Within minutes, McCluskey spots a tiny white wake in the ocean below.
I saw McCluskey point out to the side, and I looked down there, and all I could see was what looked like a little tiny miniature ship down in the water.
It's the Japanese destroyer Arashi, the vessel that had been stalking the submarine Nautilus. It has given up its search and is now powering back to the fleet.
And that ship was not zigzagging, it was going at what they call flank speed, which means a big bunch of water coming up behind it. They were doing 35 knots or more, and he was heading straight.
McCluskey wisely decides that if I just follow this ship back, he'll probably take me back to the Japanese carrier task force.
McCluskey changes course and tails the Arashi. If the Enterprise flyers can keep from running out of gas, they may hit pay dirt. The Arashi points directly at the target, but before McCluskey gets there, another attack begins. The Japanese carriers are hit by bombers. Pilot Harry Coral and rear seat gunner Lloyd Childers buzz in with 13 other TBDs to drop their payloads. But Japanese Zeros intercept them in an instant. Zeros have a top speed of 330 miles per hour, a rate of climb of 3,100 feet per minute, two 20-millimeter cannons in the wings. To make this agile predator even more lethal, there are two 7.7-millimeter machine guns in the engine cowling.
There was a Zero coming head on. He came right in a real steep bank over us. So I wanted to get a burst in, but I pressed the trigger.